what would that be like to see the Lord dwelling on that, between the cherubim on that great white throne? And we have, I hope, I'm not able to get this showing. Where did Mark or Matt go? Don't know, so I'll read them to you. From Isaiah, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, that dwelleth between the cherubim. Thank you. Okay. And then the second one, give ear, O shepherd of Israel, thou that leadest Joseph like a flock, thou that dwellest between the cherubims, shine forth. And again, the Lord reigneth, let the people tremble. He sitteth between the cherubims, let the earth be moved. And David went up to bring up thence the ark of God the Lord, that dwelleth between the cherubims. And there are two others as well. So it's very clear that this great white throne between the cherubims is the most honored, the most exalted, the most authoritative position in the universe. Amen. It is the place of highest glory in the universe. It is the throne of the omnipotent, most high God. And if you can only imagine what we will see when we're there. And so we ask again, who sits on that great white throne? If this isn't the ultimate in blasphemy, and to think that Jesus was killed on the charge of blasphemy, is this not blasphemy? And not only that, but in this ecumenical race to unite all of the religions into one, we have this statement by two Jesuits. If one recognizes a significant difference in parish life between Catholic and Protestant congregations with respect to ecclesiastical leadership, the average congregation in the Protestant churches, in fact, usually practices the kind of obedience to their church leaders that is customary in the Roman Catholic Church. And if you've been aware of what's been going on in the GC sessions, you'll see that. Therefore, these are the Jesuits confidently stating one should not overestimate the danger of a rebellion at the grassroots against their ecclesiastical leaders' decisions regarding unification. It means they're really not going to protest too much. They won't know. And so, this is just one point from a presentation I made some time ago, but I wanted you to see the enemy firsthand and the depths to which satanic forces will go. But the real topic of my presentation is Mr. Fletcher and Mrs. White, and it is a health presentation specifically about appetite, which is a far more serious matter than we may have considered because, as Mark and Melanie have been pointing out, it is a spiritual matter in ways that we may not have understood. And so we're going to work on that today, if I can make this work. F3, and it's not going. Okay, I need help again. I did F3.
Oh, you got to get out of that.
Oh, okay. Then F3.
This one.
This one, right there. Thank you, sir.
And then back to there.
Okay. Somebody calling you up. Before I do that, I want to bring another point of interest to you that I learned from Mark just yesterday. He has a piece of information from his particular background that I think is important that you understand. And it happens to deal with even purified drinking water. Don't believe that, okay? Because this purified drinking water has ingredients in it other than water, okay? And Mark is going to explain what those ingredients are.
Okay. Unmute my mic, Matt. Got it? Nope. Not yet. Test. Okay, there we go. Okay, so ingredients on this one, and you can find this in the majority of brands out there. We're not picking on a brand. Purified water calcium chloride, sodium bicarbonate. Okay, sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. Spirit of Prophecy says never should be ingested. But what about calcium chloride? When I first saw that one and noticed it one day, I thought, calcium chloride? Well, I've poured a lot of concrete. And in the wintertime, pouring concrete in the cold climate, guess what you add to the concrete? Calcium chloride. Comes with some pretty dangerous warnings about getting it on your skin or ingesting it. You're to seek the Poison Control Center if you ingest it. So that created a question in my mind. It's like, why are they doing this? So first of all, I want to give you some of my things. This is from a material data safety sheet on calcium chloride. It says calcium chloride is classified as an irritant. This means that this causes symptoms ranging from swelling, pain, burns. When you heat calcium chloride, it decomposes. This process causes emissions of hydrogen chloride fumes, which are toxic if inhaled. It causes irritation and damage to the nose, the throat. Direct contact of the salt on the skin can result in irritation and even superficial burns. And yet, you're drinking it, putting it into a very sensitive area. So why is it that they put calcium chloride in water? If I took the time to read all this to you, you would learn that calcium chloride causes excessive thirst. It's all about money in their pocket. So read it. By the way, the other ingredients that calcium chloride is commonly in, number one, tomatoes, canned tomatoes. What do you do with canned tomatoes? You put them in, and the first thing you do is you heat them, right? So what are you breathing? I just read it to you. As you're cooking your canned tomatoes.
Calcium chloride.
Pickles, another one. Many tofus, not all, but some of the tofus have calcium chloride.
They call it a firming agent.
Yes. And it is salty, and that's why they use it. But you know what else they use it for? Road de-icer. That's what they spray on the roads for de-icing. That rusts out your cars so bad.
Oh.
And the FDA has approved it in small quantities. The problem is, you drank your bottle of water, you had some tomatoes and a couple of pickles, and your tofu with your meal and all the other things, and now you have, instead of a small quantity, you have a large quantity. So read labels.
Right. Thank
Okay,
you, Mark.
I promised you I'd be real quick.
Wow, after that, I hope that what you hear now is going to be a little more uplifting, because some of this, it's basically what's on the screen. Through indulgence of appetite, through laziness or disinterest or refusal to learn or heed health laws, people cooperate with the enemy to their own physical and eternal destruction. It is a matter of salvation. Sister White wrote, "Men and women cannot violate natural laws by indulging depraved appetite without violating the law of God." You notice the word, if you violate the law of God, is that not sin? Therefore, He has permitted the light of health reform to shine on us, that we may realize the sinfulness of breaking the laws which He has established in our very being. And so, what we're going to do now is try to improve your personal situation, and by educating you, help you improve others. What these changes that you will see can improve your life, and especially if you happen to be a prepper, because we all know that there are food shortages. We all know that food prices are rising. We know that the weather is causing crop instability. We know that there are potential hard times ahead, and some of you are prepping for that, and you're storing up food, or you've got gardens going and so on. But what I'm going to be showing you today is that there is something more that you can do. It is free, it is immediate, it is sensible, and altogether practical, and it has benefits beyond anything that you would even expect. And so, I was first exposed to this concept when I read somewhere, this is quite a while ago, and I have never been able to confirm it, but some of you who know Lisette from Alberta province, Lisette says she knows that what I'm about to tell you is true. When the Allied forces released some of the prisoners from the Nazi concentration camps in Germany, there was one camp where two of the prisoners were not as skeleton, not as gaunt as the rest of the men in that concentration camp. And they suspected them of being Nazi collaborators. And so they took them aside for questioning, like, you're obviously better off than the rest of these, so what's your story? And they answered, we're not collaborators. We simply, when we got our meager rations, we would go apart and we would eat our food so slowly and so thoroughly to get every bit of nutrition and every bit of taste out of it, whereas the others are so hungry that they're gulping their food down and they're starving for the next meal. But they did not. They took their time. They chewed and chewed and chewed to get all the nutrition out. And that was the benefit of it, that they were visibly better off than the others. And so what they practiced in the 1940s in the concentration camp was actually being done some 80 years earlier by a man named Horace Fletcher. And if you notice his lifespan here, he was a contemporary of Ellen White, although because he referred to Mother Nature, he was not a Christian. But nevertheless, he discovered something that's important for us to know. And it is this. I'm going to give you a little bit of his history. When he was 40 years old, I'm going to check my notes here. When he was 40 years old, his hair was white, he was 5 feet 6 inches tall, and he weighed 217 pounds. He was sick every 6 months or so with the flu. He had indigestion, and he constantly had that tired feeling. And he just did not enjoy life. And when he applied for life insurance, he was actually turned down as a poor risk. He said that was the last straw. So he decided, I am going to quit my job. I'm going to die if I stay doing what I'm doing. So I've got to do something different. So he quit his job and he started traveling the world, going to different spas and retreats and whatever, trying to regain energy in order to enjoy life. And he said sometimes he'd go somewhere and he would be better for a little while, but then it would go back to the same old thing. And so he said, well, that's not working and I'm wasting a lot of money, so I'm going to start reading books. And I'm going to read all the books I can about health and how to regain health or how to gain it in the first place. And he said, the authors didn't agree. So there was no consensus, so obviously nobody had the answer, at least for him, because they couldn't agree. So he said, okay, what's left for me is I've got to take matters into my own hands. And I've got to deal with what you need to stay alive. And that's air, about which I can do nothing. And that's water, about which I can do little. And there's food, about which I have actually total choice of what goes into my mouth. So he said, that's the area I'm going to start because that's where I have some say in the matter. And so he decided, okay, since it's food, I'm going to focus on what goes in the mouth. And he said, okay, what's in the mouth? There's the tongue and there's the teeth and there's the palate. And, there's the taste and there's the texture. And so he decided, okay, I'm going to start with taste. And so he started with taste. And what he did then, he said, I started chewing and chewing. I'm getting all this taste. I'm going to investigate taste to the end of it. And so he started chewing and chewing, and he said, I ended up with taste sensations I've never had before because for the first time, I'm actually chewing and I'm trying to get that taste out of my food, as much taste as there is. And so he's basically experimenting on himself, And he would chew until it was so liquidy that it would basically slip down his throat, hardly without swallowing. And so he found out 5 things. And by the way, what he found out, he calls Fletcherism, which Ellen White calls mastication. But it basically means chew your food thoroughly. And so what he found was, and you're going to find an interesting parallel with what we've been hearing for the last day and a half. Number 1, you wait until you're hungry, which means regular hours of eating, but spaced far enough apart that you're likely to be hungry. Number 2, it needs to be food that appeals to you, because if it is something that you don't like, then you're not going to be in the mood to eat it. And there is an element of being grateful, of having gratefulness and pleasure in what you're eating. And if you feed me, well, that's pretty hard for me because I eat almost anything, but I can't even think of something I don't like. But anyway, it's important to like what you're eating. And then he says, get all the good taste you can out of it and swallow only when it basically, goes down the throat by itself. But one of the other important factors is don't allow anything irritating or depressing or frightening interfere, because as you learned from Mark and Melanie, there is something about even the sight of food that sends a message. The brain, the eyes see the food, the message goes to your gut. The gut starts producing the hydrochloric acid it's going to need, but it's also preparing and releasing salivary enzymes in your mouth. And for most Americans, we all eat too fast. And we skip the most important one, which is preparing the food with the salivary chemicals and enzymes for the stomach, which then does its own role. But we're missing the first part. And as they said, digestion begins in the mouth. And so he said he did this for 5 months. Now remember, he's overweight, always sick, always tired, and this is what he found in 5 months. Within 5 months, I had lost upward of 60 pounds of fat. I was feeling better in all ways than I had for 20 years. My head was clear, my body felt springy, I enjoyed walking, I hadn't had a single cold in 5 months. That tired feeling was gone. And so he had all of those benefits. And it was kind of interesting. He said one of the things that happened when he lost weight was that he lost the weight, but his skin didn't keep up with it. So he's got saggy skin on his face, saggy skin on his body, because where the skin had been stretched out by the excess weight, now it hasn't shrunk back into, to meet his new weight. But it eventually did. At first they said, you're looking pretty bad for as good as you say you're feeling. But eventually that, corrected itself also. But because within a year or so, they're saying, you never looked so good. But the problem was, he went around telling people, this is a fantastic experience. This is what happened to me. Here's my story. And they're looking at him like, you're a fanatic. Maybe it worked for you, but it's not going to work for me. And no one is going to sit there and chew their food 40 times. And to tell you the truth, recently I broke my ankle, and I was in Canada, and friends were taking care of my meals and things, and I told them about this, so we decided to practice this during our mealtime. And this chewing definitely does kill table conversation, okay? It's not impossible, but it certainly does reduce it. But anyway, look at the benefits up there, And so, and again, I'm going to show you, he lost excess pounds and normalized his weight. He lost that fatigue of brain and muscle. He gained lean muscle mass and strength without doing anything other than changing the way he ate. And this is not bulking up, this is lean muscle mass, which is superior to the bulking up. He had far fewer episodes of illness. He had increased energy, even though he was eating almost half of what he used to eat. He was down to like 1,600 calories per day, which you're told you can't survive on that. And yet he was eating almost half. So if we're in a time of trouble and we don't have much food, this is going to be one of your solutions, and it's valuable to share with other people. Anyway, continuing, his physical endurance greatly increased, and I'm going to give you details in a second. His enjoyment of life, greatly increased, and he gained a new purpose in life, all when in and past middle age. This is pretty awesome. All he did was change the way he ate. So, unfortunately, his story didn't convince many people, and he said there was no end of ridicule, no end of skepticism. Nobody would listen to him until he was in Italy, and he ran across a Dr. Van Semmeren, and Dr. Van Semmeren, although he was a doctor, could not recover from whatever his illness was. And this is a doctor treating himself. And so Mr. Fletcher told him about what had happened with him and how he recovered from tiredness and constant illness, etc. Well, Dr. Van Semmeren had nothing to lose, so he tried it. And I'm going to read to you. In less than 3 weeks of Fletcherizing or masticating his food, the sick physician found himself relieved of his acute illness. 3 weeks. That is amazing. And he said this was the break he needed, because here now is somebody with his own testimony, a medical professional. And this medical professional, he said nothing was going to hold him back. He wrote articles, and the articles caught the attention of some medical professionals and physiologists elsewhere. So the first one, they went to Cambridge, England, Cambridge University. And anyway, they presented their theories, and at least they now have heard of it. And so they said, well, we want you to come and present your experience, your findings, to this physiology big summit where the big names and the big gathering was. And they said, you can present it. And he said, and the people will listen. And so he did his presentation, and the man afterward, the organizer afterward said, they like you, but they're really not accepting what you're saying, because it's only your experience and Dr. Van Semmeren's. So we need to believe really what you're saying, and to think that it can apply to all people. We need to do a bigger experiment. And so here's where Yale gets in the picture, because Yale wants this big experiment to be done in the United States, so the United States can get the credit for this understanding. And so they ended up going to the Yale gym. And so he said, first they wanted to test him, Mr. Fletcher. And he said that was an eye-opener. He said, I personally, and this is in his mid-40s now, I personally showed endurance and strength in special tests superior to the foremost athletes at that university. And this was without training and with comparatively small muscle. And so he said the quality of the muscle that I gained simply by changing the way I eat was so much better than what the college athletes had by working out and practicing their skill. And so again, the idea is, how can we prove that this is not just unique to Mr. Fletcher, but everybody can do it? And so we're back now. The Surgeon General of the U.S. Army is now interested, and they have a War Department facility, and they said, we'll volunteer our soldiers to be your guinea pigs, and we are going to do this experiment. And so, well, they actually did this, and they're doing tests of endurance. Now, this is after some time of doing the actual thoroughly masticating their food, till it's liquid, okay? And so I want you to hear some of these test results. Okay, and they did it on 3 groups of people. They did it on the college athletes, they did it on the students who were more sedentary, and they did it on members of the faculty of Battle Creek Sanitarium. So there was Yale and Harvard and Battle Creek at the time. Okay, and so they were testing the limits of human endurance simply through Fletcherizing. Okay, and so one of the tests, and this is after several weeks of doing this Fletcherizing, one of the tests was deep knee bending. Okay, and that means you squat down on your heels and then you stand up, squat down on your heels, stand up, and you do this. Well, one of the men of the Battle Creek Sanitarium staff did that. Are you ready? 5,002 times without stopping. Even if we get a portion of that kind of ability, I want it. And then after doing that, and he did that consecutively for 2 hours and 19 minutes, then he ran down the stairs, jumped in the pool, swam some laps, and slept soundly, and no soreness or disability the next day. And again, there was a Dr. Wagner. What he did to contribute to the endurance is that he did his arms out horizontally. What I don't know is whether it was side to side or whether it was in front. But nevertheless, he did that 200 minutes over 2 hours without rest. And the only reason they stopped it is because the people watching him, so that he didn't slack off, they got tired of watching him. Okay, so they ended it. But he had no signs of fatigue. And the article, his testimony says, it sounds like exaggerations, but these are not exaggerations. And so there was Dr. Anderson, director of the Yale gym, the gymnasium. He was 58, and he decided he would get into some of these tests. At 58, he did, and let me get his details, he outperformed Yale athletes in all of the testing events, including holding the arms out. You know what? I tried that. I'm even embarrassed to tell you because I thought I was in decent physical shape. I did it under 10 minutes. That's pretty pathetic. And here he's doing it for 2 hours. Anyway, this man at 58, and he also did the calf raises, just the calf raises on an intricate machine. So his calf muscles had to have been tremendously powerful without being totally bulked up. Well, anyway, this man, Dr. Anderson, also put on muscle mass, 15 pounds of pure muscle to a frame, a body that had never carried more than 135 pounds before that. So he was a small man, a thin man, and he gained pure muscle mass. Okay, there was another, one of the heavyweight participants, and he reduced his waist measurement to 30 inches and a half. His chest measurement went up to 44 inches. And he said he is healthy without, and you can see his muscles, but without working out. The only thing, the test had to be pure, so there couldn't be any working out. It had to be simply because of the food. And so, anyway, and this is without training, and they showed a total of strength and endurance 100% more than when they began. And so, anyway, so these are the incidents of this Fletcherizing, the benefit of choosing. And so, where is another one? Okay, this Dr. Anderson, another doctor, lifted 300 pounds dead weight 350 times with only the muscles of his right leg below his knee. I don't know how many men in here could do anything close to that. even the younger ones. The best record prior to that 350 times was 175 by a college athlete. And this man was 58. On Mr. Fletcher's 50th birthday, he rode nearly 200 miles on his bike over French roads and came home feeling fine. And just to test himself, he said, I wasn't stiff the next morning, and before breakfast, I rode 50 miles just to see if I could still do it. And he could. Okay, so let's get into the food part of this. We have evidence that there is a connection between what you see and what you smell have to do with digestion. And this is a technical one from Wikipedia. The cephalic stage of digestion is the stage in which the stomach responds to the mere sight, smell, taste, or even thought of food. About 20% of the total acid secretion occurs before food even enters the stomach. These sensory and mental inputs converge on the hypothalamus, a part of the brain, to induce the responses to send the signals to the other organs needed for preparing the gastrointestinal tract for food processing, which itself relays signals to the medulla oblongata, another part of the brain. Vagus nerve fibers, you've heard the Rubanskis talk about this. They stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system of the stomach, which in turn stimulates gastric secretion. It only occurs when food is desired. When the appetite is depressed, this part of the cephalic reflex is inhibited. It means you need to be hungry when you eat, which is the benefit of regular times of eating. And so this slide is what you just read in normal English. When it comes to a meal, what we anticipate, see, smell, and then actually taste are all critical to the digestive process. The senses of sight and smell build interest in the food, which interest causes the body to begin to secrete stomach acid in preparation for that food. And then comes taste. Taste receptors in the mouth, stimulated by pleasurable and necessary chewing, signals the brain to release specific types and amounts of digestive juices, not only in the mouth, the salivary enzymes, but also in the stomach, hydrochloric acid. And they also influence the movement of the food through the digestive tract. That's peristalsis, which you've heard about earlier. The beneficial dietary connection between the mouth, the brain, meaning the mind, and the stomach is made by the vagus nerve, which connects the gut to the brain. When a person is depressed, angry, anxious, or fearful, this healthy process is greatly inhibited or even stopped. We are not, Ellen White says, we are not to eat if we have emotional issues going on. We are to eat with a grateful, cheerful mindset in order for the proper processes to occur. Last paragraph. An upset brain or mind causes the stomach not to properly function, and a disturbed gut causes disturbance and inefficiency in the brain. So, I'm reading this about Mr. Fletcher and what he found, and which was validated at Yale and Cambridge and Harvard and Battle Creek. And so I'm wondering, I know he lived during Ellen White's times and, happened to mention Battle Creek. So I wonder what Ellen White had to say about this. Is there further information from our Lord through his servant about this? And so you're going to see that there is. You're going to see the importance of the mind when it comes to eating. And you're also going to see again that this really is a salvational issue. And so we go. The state of the mind has largely to do with the health of the body, and especially with the health of the digestive organs. As a general thing, The Lord did not provide his people with flesh meat in the desert because he knew that the use of this diet would create disease and insubordination. In order to modify the disposition and bring the higher powers of the mind into active exercise, he removed from them the flesh of dead animals. And again, and we're probably all guilty of this, maybe not all, but I bet most of us are. Many eat too rapidly. Others eat at one meal food which does not agree. If men and women would only remember how greatly they afflict the soul when they afflict the stomach, and how deeply Christ is dishonored when the stomach is abused, they would be brave and self-denying, giving the stomach opportunity to recover its healthy action. And that's from no snacking, no eating between meals, fasting if necessary. While sitting at the table, we may do medical missionary work by eating and drinking to the glory of God. And then you've heard that we are not to drink with our meals. We need to drink anywhere from half an hour to an hour before our meals, because it goes into the stomach and of course it's diluting the hydrochloric acid. But by God's perfect design, the excess liquid will go out through the wall of the stomach and then restore the necessary acidity for digestion. And so Ellen White, through the Holy Spirit's prompting, wrote, "Food should not be washed down. No drink is needed with meals. Eat slowly and allow the saliva to mingle with the food." And you know, you're seeing this because I asked for the position right before lunch, okay? There was a reason for that. So listen up. The more liquid there is taken into the stomach with the meals, the more difficult it is for the food to digest, for the liquid must first be absorbed. Hot drinks are debilitating, and besides, those indulge in their use become slaves to the habit. Do not eat largely of salt. Give up bottled pickles. Keep fiery spiced food out of your stomach. If anything is needed to quench thirst, pure water, drunk some little time before or after a meal, is all that nature requires. Water is the best liquid possible to cleanse the tissues. And again, she's repeating or reiterating or finding the same thing that Fletcher found. Masticate slowly and allow the saliva to mingle with the food. In order to secure healthy digestion, and again, if the gut is happy, the mind is happy, okay? And vice versa. If the mind is happy, the gut functions happily. So, in order to secure healthy digestion, food should be eaten slowly. Those who wish to avoid dyspepsia, which means stomach issues, and those who realize their obligation to keep all their powers in a condition which will enable them to render the best service to God, will do well to remember this. If your time to eat is limited, don't bolt your food, but eat less and masticate slowly. The benefit derived from food does not depend so much upon the quantity eaten as on thorough digestion, nor the gratification of taste so much on the amount of food eaten or swallowed as on the length of time it remains in the mouth. Again, we cannot expect the stomach to be in a healthy condition, which means the mind won't be in a healthy condition either, okay? We cannot expect the stomach to be in a healthy condition if we're careless in regard to eating. We should treat it wisely. We have no right to put into it at one meal a heterogeneous, meaning varied mass of food without regard to the disagreement that may be caused thereby. God has given us thinking powers to reason about these matters, and we are guilty before God if we do not study from cause to effect. If we do not have respect for the organs of our bodies, which are not our own, our health will testify to the abuse. I say to you, take care of your digestive organs. Your will must control your desires. By the exercise of the willpower in the matter of mastication, you can bring your food into a proper state for stomach digestion before it leaves the mouth. What else? There are some things that we eat that are not the best to eat, at least in the way that we eat them. And here's one. There is one thing I'm convinced of. If we want good, genuine specimens of dyspepsia, which means stomach issues, we should allow them plenty of mush and gruel. Mush and gruel are liquidy substances that don't need even to be chewed because they're already liquidy. Okay, which means nobody chews them, and therefore they don't get mixed with the salivary enzymes and chemicals, which means they go into the stomach unprepared, and the stomach says, I'll do what I can, but don't expect me to be happy about this. And so Ellen White calls it this slippery stuff. And she says this slippery stuff debilitates the digestive organs. I think dry food that will require mastication far preferable. With gruel and puddings, there's not so much masticating required. With more solid food, there's more necessity for masticating the food. I fear the Health Institute has too much of this slipped-down food that sours and rots but does not digest because it hasn't been prepared in the mouth. Now, she said, no one has suggested these thoughts to me, but I've studied them out myself. Father, meaning James White, has not improved much while eating so much or swallowing this kind of food. He is eating more solid food, and I'm satisfied it's better for him. Now, am I saying don't ever eat oatmeal? Am I saying don't ever eat cream of wheat or whatever? No. But what I am saying is that if you will add things to it, nuts and seeds, and breadcrumbs even, that have to be chewed along with it, then you will be required to chew. Continuing, the stomach is closely related to the brain, and when the stomach is diseased, the nerve power called from the brain to the aid of the weakened digestive organs. When these demands are too frequent, the brain becomes congested, and you learned that if we snack between meals, the digestion of the previous meal stops, and then it sits there and it ferments. So, and then the brain becomes congested. When the brain is constantly taxed and there's a lack of physical exercise, even plain food should be eaten sparingly. At mealtime, cast off care and anxious thought. Don't feel hurried. Eat slowly and with cheerfulness, with your heart filled with gratitude to God for all of his blessings. Okay. Nearly all the members of the human family eat more than the system requires. And like I said, going back to Mr. Fletcher, he's eating 1,600 calories a day. And the minimum you should be eating, according to the AMA, is 1,200 per meal. That's 2,400 calories per day. And he is at 1,600 calories. He's well below that. And yet he thrived on that. So, even so-called health reform needs reforming on this point. If more food, even if of simple quality, is placed in the stomach than the living machinery requires, this surplus becomes a burden. The system makes a desperate effort to dispose of it, and this extra effort causes a weakly feeling. Some who are continually overeating call this all-gone feeling hunger, but it's caused by the overworked condition of the abused digestive organs. And overeating, by the way, is difficult to do when you're thoroughly chewing your food. Yes. Okay.
Because you got a gag reflex.
Okay. But soft or liquid foods are less wholesome than dry foods, which require thorough mastication. Solid foods requiring mastication will be far better than mush or liquid foods. Okay, so what does this do to fruit smoothies and green smoothies? Aha. So now we're told they're really healthful. So what are you going to do about them? You need to chew them because they need to be prepared for the stomach just like any other food. And so as ridiculous as it may sound, you need to chew your smoothies. Either that or put them in the blender and make them thicker so that you are required to at least chew some of it, but you are getting the principle. Okay. The last one, so far as possible, we should avoid hurried eating. The shorter the time for a meal, the less should be eaten. It's better to omit a meal than to eat without proper mastication. Because, as you read in the earlier one, it burdens the body, and you end up tired and weak and wondering, what's the matter with me? It is important that we relish the food that we eat. If we cannot do this, but eat mechanically, we fail to be nourished and built up as we would be if we could enjoy the food we take into the stomach. This is an area where I'm quite guilty, because when I eat, and I'm not with other company, when I eat, I always have a book in front of me. And I can tell you what I read, but I have no clue what I ate. And I will test myself. A couple of hours later, what did I eat? And I realize something's got to change, because I'm eating mechanically, And so that's one habit that I'm reluctantly going to give up, but I am going to give it up. Next, we know about less, I'm going to hear. Go looking at the very bottom of it. No, I'm sorry, this one I'm going to read. Lead the people to study the manifestation of God's love and wisdom in the works of nature. Lead them to study the marvelous organism, the human system, and the laws by which it's governed. Those who perceive the evidences of God's love, who understand something of the wisdom and beneficence of his laws and the results of obedience, will come to regard their duties and obligations from an altogether different point of view. Instead of looking on an observance of the laws of health as a matter of sacrifice and self-denial, they will regard it as it really is, as an inestimable blessing. Not only that, it affects the mental. The reason the people did not go through to the promised land was because of repeated indulgence of appetite. 9/10 of the wickedness among the children of today is caused by intemperance in eating and drinking. Adam and Eve lost Eden through the indulgence of appetite, and we regain it only by the denial of the same. So, we're almost at the end. Ooh, it's 2 o'clock. Okay, it's 2 o'clock, and I'm going to keep with that, but I'm going to summarize. The summary is this. The what if means, what if we don't want to do this? What if we cling to our old habits? And so I'm going to show you this one. Many seem to think they have a right to treat their bodies as they please, but they forget their bodies are not their own. Their Creator, who loves them and formed them, has claims on them that they cannot rightly throw off. Every needless transgression of the laws which God has established in our being is virtually a violation of the law of God, and is as great a sin in the sight of heaven as to break the 10 Commandments. I plead with you that you understand how important this is. Ignorance on this important subject is sin. The light is now beaming upon us, and we are without excuse if we do not cherish the light and become intelligent in regard to these things, which it is in our highest earthly interest to understand. Intemperance, the violation of these natural laws, is idolatry of appetite, and idolatry is sin. And I will end because it's 2 o'clock and lunch is ready, but I'd like to end with a prayer for each one of us. Father, you have created these bodies. You have blessed us with wisdom that the rest of the earth needs. And we need it, Lord, and you have seen fit to provide it. Thank you for this understanding. And Lord, now on behalf of every single soul here, I plead with you, Father, that your Spirit would strive with us and give us the strength we need to heed this wise counsel from your throne, and give us the strength and the will and the love of you to obey for your glory and for our health, so that we may serve you longer and better. And this we ask, Father, in the name of your beloved Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.